This is Tyrese Haliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Setting the pace with Alex and Facci. Alex and Facci. Alex and Alex. Yeah! 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 That's how we feel!
Let's go! Joining us now on Setting the Pace, he is a writer for the Indianapolis Business Journal and the better half of Query and Schultz. It is Derek Schultz coming back to talk Pacers basketball with us. Derek, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Alex, I waited until you hit record so I could show you the shirt that I'm wearing.
Oh yeah,
there we go. I just wanted to make sure that I represented properly on this program, even though we're not going to talk college basketball at all. Thank God.
Yeah, I know. Purdue though, they're looking pretty good. Looks like they're going to be like a top 3 team in the college basketball for next year. So we'll see. I mean, it looks like they're ranked pretty high, but like you said, we're not talking Purdue basketball now. We're going to talk about the Pacers because they just had an epic 5-game series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Pretty much just dismantled them. Could potentially have broken up their team. We'll see what happens. But now they face the Cavaliers, and it's going to be a lot more difficult playing against a team that just won 64 regular season games, a team that is really just built similarly to the Pacers. They have a lot of depth, but this Pacers team, they've proven a lot to us over the last couple of years is how resilient they are. So, Derek, I'll just kind of leave the question open-ended here, but like if you're looking at this Pacers team and you're kind of trying to break things down, what do you think is the main advantage the Pacers have in this series against the Cavaliers?
Yeah, it's a great question because they're not going to have a lot of the advantages that they had against Milwaukee, particularly their depth, because Cleveland is very deep. And just their roster overall is just a better roster than Milwaukee's. And this is what happens in the playoffs, guys, right? This is you advance and then you play somebody that's better than the team that you just beat. So, 9 times out of 10, at least, that's usually how it goes, unless there's some sort of unforeseen upset in the previous round. So it's harder to pick when you're just looking at these two teams where I think the Pacers are significantly better, much less better, or where they can take advantage, because the Cavs on paper, I think we're sort of underselling how good of a season they just had. Like if you would swap the Cleveland jerseys with the Boston jerseys and you would say, okay, yeah, this is the Celtics, and you gave them the same exact stuff on paper, 64 wins and their defensive numbers, their offensive numbers, their scoring numbers, their roster, the whole deal. I think most people would look at them and be like, oh, damn, like this is going to be a really tough series. Whereas the familiarity and the fact that they're the Cavs, it kind of reminds me of how people treated the Pacers in 14, where, yeah, they were the 1 seed, right? But you were like, yeah, but nationally I'm talking, it's the Pacers, right? The Pacers, right? They don't, whatever. The Cavs outside of LeBron, they've had some good teams, but they've never really been like they're not viewed as a championship franchise or anything like that. But I do think that, I'm wary of people underselling how good Cleveland is, because can the Pacers, of course they can win this series. When the Pacers play at their very best, I really feel like they can beat anybody. Now, over a 7-game series, that's tough to do. On any given night, we've seen the Pacers kind of claim some scalps before in the past, but winning 4 out of 7 is much more of a difficult challenge. But 14 more games. I mean, the Pacers had a great season, guys. Cavs won 14 more games. That's almost a fifth of the season. 14 games. That's a lot. But I think you can kind of look back and throw out essentially all 4 of the games of the teams. Certainly the late season games; those were warm-ups. They were a bunch of nonsense. But even the January games, like it was a weird, it wasn't a back-to-back, right? But they played was it twice in 3 nights or twice in 4 nights?
Yeah, it was two in the same week at least.
2 and 3 nights. It was Sunday, Tuesday.
And Haliburton gets hurt, right? And it's just like, it was like a weird, not everybody was healthy. And I just don't know. We just saw it in the last series. What you choose to read into even a legitimate season series between two teams, I think you kind of have to throw that stuff out, because really, if we're being honest, the Bucks should have won all 4 of those games. And what did it mean for the last couple of weeks? Nothing. Meant absolutely nothing.
Right.
Pacers were far and away the better team outside of like the third quarter of game 3 and 4 minutes of game 2. They were by far the better team in the series. So, yeah, I feel like I'm just talking in circles. Alex, your original question was, what advantage can the Pacers have in this series? I think they better take advantage of their ability to protect the basketball. And not turn it over. They did a great job against Milwaukee doing that. I think why that is so paramount in this series is because unlike Milwaukee, Cleveland can actually rebound the basketball. And so that turnovers are even more important because you know that you're going to be giving up second chances because you just are. The Pacers could play great on the glass and still they're not going to be able to keep Cleveland totally in check because that's how good they are in that category. So, if you're asking me an area on the stat sheet where I think the Pacers can take advantage or where they'll have to take advantage if they're actually going to win this series is they're just going to have to play turnover-free basketball like they've been doing. And that's what gives me confidence. I mean, they're coming off a stretch where they turn it over, 10 times, 11 times per game against Milwaukee. And in some of those games, I mean, game 1 and game 2, they were fantastic with the ball.
Games 4 and 5, very quiet performances for Pascal Siakam, who has been awesome throughout the regular season. I mean, as consistent as they come, great games in games 1, 2, and 3. Now he draws the defensive matchup with the defensive player of the year in Evan Mobley. Are you worried about Pascal Siakam, the fact that maybe, he could be in for a really tough series, or is this just one of those where we're going to see just how important he is to this team and he's going to be able to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, Pascal's a gamer, so I never don't feel confident in his ability, even when he sometimes has quiet games like you mentioned at the end of that series, Facci. But, it's cry to reward. I mean, this is what you get with playoff basketball. Your first assignment is Giannis, and then you kind of exhale for 5 seconds, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, guess what? Now it's, Evan Mobley. It's just like, oh my God. So I get probably the best player in the Eastern Conference in round 1, and then I get maybe the best defender in the league in round 2. So it's going to be tough for him. But I think what the Pacers got away with in the series against the Bucks was that they didn't necessarily need a whole lot from Siakam. They didn't necessarily need a whole lot from Haliburton. Some of their parts, right? Miles Turner had a fantastic series. Andrew Nembhard, for the most part, had a fantastic series. Aaron Nesmith had a fantastic series. So you got all of those pieces around them, the ancillary pieces that really show out and play well. I think you're going to need that again, but I also think that you're going to need, more often than not, you're going to need Siakam and Haliburton to be excellent. I don't think they can kind of go ahead and disappear. And, I buck against the people that are obsessed with particularly Haliburton's scoring total all the time, where he impacts the game in so many other ways that when you look, what are you talking about? He had 17 points. So what? But every time he touches the ball, he can do something with it and impact the game. And I think they're just going to need some more oomph from Siakam. They're going to need, game 1, game 2 Siakam more than what they got at the beginning half of the series, more than they got in the close of the series in Milwaukee. But am I worried about him? Mobley's tough, man. I mean, yeah. So yeah. I'm concerned as far as that is concerned. But again, he's a gamer. He's tough. He's tough too. So that's a matchup that if he could at least kind of keep it even and not keep it totally one-sided, then I think, and you look at a couple of matchups for the Pacers that I think you would say that about because, this Cleveland roster, like I said, no offense to Milwaukee. Milwaukee's a good team, but the roster to me is just night and day. If you were doing a draft of Cleveland's roster and Milwaukee's roster, after you took Giannis, I think the next 4 or 5 people would be Cavs. So it's a whole different ballgame than what we saw in the first round.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's really funny you were kind of talking about how Haliburton has to be better and Siakam has to be better, because I was actually going to bring that up. I think a couple things here with Siakam, Facci, to your question too for Derek, I'll just kind of echo this. I just think Pascal had to do such a heavy lifting job of guarding Giannis, and everything was just Giannis centric. He was a heliocentric type player, and they really didn't have a point guard. He was kind of having to initiate a lot of stuff. Where I think with Mobley, if that's his primary defensive matchup, I think that you're going to see a lot more of the ball in Garland's hands and Mitchell's hands, so Siakam won't have to play so much on-ball defense 24/7, which will allow him more energy on offense, which I think is a good thing. And then you brought it up. I mean, Kevin Bowen was on this podcast a couple of days ago saying that, Aaron Nesmith was the MVP of the series. Well, if you want to beat the Cavaliers, I love Aaron Nesmith, but he cannot be your MVP. No, you need your best players like Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam to be your MVPs in this series. So, just kind of echoing off of that, I mean, Haliburton, you mentioned it. You can't be a scorer all the time, but he's got to be able to pick his points in the series when he needs to take them, right? He has to attack at the right times and just be effective. He cannot have these games where he has 12 points and 12 assists. I don't think they can win that way if Haliburton's not closer to 20 points a game, just because they're going to need more of his scoring. And I'm not saying he has to score 30 or anything crazy like that, but he has to have an uptick in scoring, and his 3-point percentage in the first round was awful. I don't know what it was total, but like I think it was close to like low 30s. So
yeah, 11 of 41.
You cannot shoot that poorly from three if you're expecting to kind of beat the Cavs here and kind of have an upset. So I just think Haliburton, what areas do you think also he needs to be better in besides just maybe an uptick in the shooting percentage?
Yeah, I mean, you always look at him defensively of not being a liability on that end. So just kind of maintaining himself and not being noticeable on that end as well. But really, to me, Alex, it kind of starts and ends with the 3-point shooting. I'm not worried about him getting to the rim. I mean, he does that just about against everybody, even a team against the Cavs with their interior defense and their defense in general. That's about as challenging as it gets, but that's how good Haliburton is. I think he can be effective no matter who he's playing when it comes to that. But the 3-point shooting has just got to be better. And I would like to, and I wouldn't say this about the early, he was missing shots early in the series, and I didn't think they were necessarily bad shots.
No.
They flipped the script in the final 40 seconds, but the storyline after that game, had they would have lost, would have been, what the hell was Haliburton doing in the overtime? Like he took 2 or 3 shots, kind of out of rhythm, and you're just like, what are we doing? Like going for the kill shot, sort of, it felt like, or trying to go kind of mano-a-mano when Gary Trent Jr. was on his run, and it just wasn't working, and obviously those shots weren't falling. So yeah, to me, it's still about the 3-point shooting for him. It's got to be significantly better. And I agree with you. I mean, I think the scoring average has to be somewhere that we all know the stats of when he scores 20 and how much more successful the Pacers are. But especially in a series like this against an opponent like this, they're just going to have more from him. And this is what comes with the territory with Haliburton. Some people will say, well, you're being too hard on him. And he was good last series, and look at the clutch plays. Look, I'm not disputing any of that. I thought he had a good series. What I want to see this time of year, it's May. I want to see Haliburton be great. That's what I want. Nobody's questioning that the guy's good. Nobody's questioning that the guy comes through when, kind of the chips are on the table, but I want him to have great games. I find it amazing. If you would have told me before the series that the Pacers would win in 5 without having a single 30-point performance from anybody, while the Bucks had, umpteen, right? I mean, hell, Gary Trent Jr. had 2, for God's sake. I would have probably laughed you out of the room, but I'm not saying Ty needs to score 30, but I think they do need to have one of like those games from their star players. If Siakam just goes off, or Haliburton has a stretch where he just goes crazy, he hits 4 threes in a row and he's skipping and doing the whole deal. That's what you need to beat a team like Cleveland.
I think a little bit anticlimactic with Bennedict Mathurin's playoff debut, his first round series. The minutes a little bit up and down, played more minutes in the first half than the second half, and in many of the games had the abdomen bruise. Do you think that Mathurin could be poised for maybe a breakout game? Not to say a series, but do we think that Mathurin could give us more, or is it more, hey, this is the playoffs, there's a lot of guys you're trying to get minutes for. Mathurin might only be able to get 15 or so minutes on any given night, which might make it hard for him to be able to have a breakout game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little more the latter, Facci, but I think what's important for Mathurin is not how many minutes he's getting, it's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Just take advantage of the time that you get. What stinks for him is that basically everybody else that's playing right now, I mean, they're except Thomas Bryant, people like that, they're exceptions, but most of the core pieces that are playing right now, they were on the ride last year. Yep. They went through all that stuff. Ben Mathurin didn't go through any of that. I mean, outside of like, he was like you, me, and Alex. He was just watching, because that's what he was relegated to because of the injury. So I do feel for him and not having, I'm a big believer, and I don't want to sound like too cliched. I know it sounds cliche, but like, I'm a big believer in that, you learn by doing, and the NBA experience is really critical. And I think he's still kind of feeling his way around. I hope he can get to the line. He at least was effective doing that in his minutes, and obviously not picking up bad technicals and doing some of the dumb stuff as well. But I think it's just about, for Mathurin, maximizing the minutes that he gets. But I mean, honestly, I would say that about just about everybody else too. As much as this is about Siakam and Haliburton, the star players being stars. It's about still getting the contributions that you've gotten from Turner, from Nesmith, from Nembhard, and we could just go all the way down the roster. TJ McConnell, we could say the same thing about. Sometimes TJ really struggles. And then other times you're like, oh my God, like he's taking over the game. So it's just about taking advantage of the minutes that you have and just, dominating your kind of section, if you will, because obviously if Ben Mathurin is your best player or TJ McConnell is your best player in a game against Cleveland, you're probably not winning that game.
I want to look at Mathurin a little bit from a different perspective just because of what we've seen from him so far throughout his career. He is a better on-ball defender than he is an off-ball defender. And if you look at a lot of the Cavs backups, they are all three-point specialists. You're looking at a Dean Wade, a Sam Merrill, even a DeAndre Hunter at times. Those guys can really spray it from outside. And if Mathurin gets caught on an island not paying attention to those guys and they start going off, I wonder how much he'll be able to play in this series and if Carlisle will kind of keep the leash short. I understand that what he provides offensively, you're going to need at times in a series like this. But because, like you said, he didn't play at all last year, and a guy that did play last year and was very good defensively, even though he can't throw the ball in the ocean right now, it has been Shepherd. And so I heard Michael Pina say this on Zach Lowe's show today, talking about he wonders if Mathurin potentially gets played out of the rotation. I'm not thinking that he's going to go that far, but I do think that his minutes could be limited, specifically if he doesn't lock in defensively as a guy that can guard off-ball shooters that are going to be able to like torch the Pacers if these guys get open looks. So just curious your thoughts on how Mathurin can kind of keep himself on the floor and just the importance of knowing how to defend guys that can really spray the ball from outside.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's going to have to play well and be locked in on that end to earn the minutes, because the second that he's not, then he's going to get, it's going to be a short leash when it comes to that. But I do think that the reason why I don't think that Mathurin, barring something like egregious or unforeseen, is going to play himself out of the rotation is that I think that the fact that Carlisle wants to play deep and play a bunch of people, I think that really played in the Pacers' favor last series, and Cleveland has the ability to play a bunch of guys as well. So if we're talking about shortening the rotation, that sounds all well and good in a vacuum, but suddenly you do that and you're taxing everybody else, while Cleveland doesn't usually have to tax themselves because they can roll 10 deep if they really want to. So I think it's just imperative that Mathurin play, because I think that's going to be part of the key to winning this series is still kind of keeping that, last year it was all about shorten the rotation. Now it's like, I think they have to play 9 or 10 guys to kind of play to all their strengths, and especially against a team like Cleveland, that it's going to be very difficult. They're going to be gassed defensively. They're just a much more difficult team to play than Milwaukee is. Milwaukee essentially let the Pacers do whatever they wanted on offense.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to guard Giannis. It's hard to chase Dame and AJ Green and Gary Trent Jr., all these guys around, right? All these shooters around. But for the most part, on the other end, Pacers were on easy street. I mean, they barely had to expend any effort at all offensively. And that's not going to be the case against Cleveland.
Yeah, Derek, call me crazy, but if the Pacers come out and they take game one until we lose at home, am I crazy to say that if Indiana can take one of those first two, it could change everything in this series? Because the Pacers at home right now, I mean, they are on another level. They won all 3 of their home games. In this past series against Milwaukee, we saw how good Indiana was at home last year in the playoffs. If Indiana is to take one of 2, in the first 2 games against Cleveland, could that swing the series?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it would swing the series. I would say that it is imperative, if they're going to win the series, they've got to split the first 2.
Yes.
Because the way that I look at it, guys, is that the second you go down 2-0, to me, I'm preparing for a best-case scenario road game 7. Yeah. That to me is the best case scenario at that point, that you can get it to 7 and play. And we see what teams win 20, 25%, whatever it is of the time. And the home court advantage, I do think is real. But as we say that, Pacers are down 47 with 40 seconds left the other night in their last home game. Pacers, for whatever reason, went into the fetal position from the 5-minute mark to the 1-minute mark of game 2 and almost screwed around and got beat. So as good as they've been for large swaths of their of the playoffs, obviously that series against Milwaukee and just the season in general, I don't want to make it sound like they're invincible at home. I do think that they are very, very tough to beat there. And, you're surprised whenever they lose at home, especially in a playoff game. But, I would say that they would have to get, I don't know if setting the tone and stuff like that, or the historical stuff. Like I saw a stat that Cleveland is 31-1 all time when they win a game one. So Craig Elo and Mark Price won game ones, and that, what does that mean really? Except it's kind of a quirky fact. But I think you have to get this series to 1-1 because winning 4 out of 5 against Cleveland, then your margin for error is 0. You got to win all the home games, and then you've got to still steal one, at least 1 or 2. I mean, I think essentially at that point, you kind of have to win the series in 6. So you kind of have to win 4 straight games, which against Cleveland is going to be just very, very, very difficult to do.
Yeah, I don't see Indiana winning 4 straight games against Cleveland in this series. So I think they're going to have to figure out a way to make the series if they want to not get, beat in 5 or 6 like a lot of people are predicting. But I think one of the most important players for this team, and it's been that way the last couple of years for the playoffs, has just been Andrew Nembhard and what he's been able to do on both ends of the floor, and like the secondary playmaking out there next to Tyrese and not overloading him and overtaxing him with the ball in his hands. But I think it's going to be interesting because we did a Cavaliers preview just the episode before this, and talking about Max Strus and how he's going to probably be the primary defender on Tyrese, which makes me wonder, where is Darius Garland going to be at defensively? Because he's been their biggest liability as a defender for the Cavaliers. If he's guarding Andrew Nembhard, how important is it going to be for Nembhard to be a threat offensively and just continue to do what he did, especially in games 1 and 2 against the Bucks, where he just got in there, kind of used that shoulder bump that he has to just make Garland work defensively and then become more of an offensive threat, because he can't be having games, in my opinion, where he's under 10 points a game, even though he's defending his butt off. I think they're going to need his scoring throughout this series just because of how difficult they're going to try to make things for Tyrese and Pascal and Miles. Like, he's a guy that's just going to be such a big X factor.
Yeah, I mean, you're just going to have to win that matchup because that's a matchup that you can win. As far as finding ways to exploit Garland defensively, I'm not saying that that's a matchup that you're going to win on the other end because Garland's really good. But Nembhard is going to have to, I think, at least kind of hold water on that end, because it's just going to be a lot more difficult for Aaron Nesmith to do what he did offensively in the last. It's going to be a lot more difficult for Miles Turner to do what he did offensively last series. So you kind of have to find ways to take advantage of the advantages that you do have, because, we kind of kicked off our conversation with, what advantages do the Pacers have, and it's hard to find many. So finding like little tiny things like that, in a matchup that you can exploit potentially for, 14 to 16 points instead of 7 to 9 points, that can make a really big difference. But, Nembhard, I'm not worried about him defensively at all, basically against anyone. I mean, that's kind of the level that he's raised his game to. He's going to have bad nights just like anybody else, but he's somebody that I'm fully and completely confident in drawing any sort of matchup like that, even against, a very gifted scorer.
Do you think the Pacers' confidence and chemistry that they have right now is something that could kind of lift them to standards that are above maybe what they should be capable of? Because I think they could be looking at Cleveland right now saying, well, what have they done that matters? I mean, in the regular season, great team, don't get me wrong, but has Donovan Mitchell ever played in the finals? No. Has Jared Allen ever played in the finals? No. Evan Mobley? Nope. You can go down the list. And these players are not players that have the championship experience. I view these teams as I view the Cavs, obviously ahead of the Pacers, but the Pacers are the team that have had more playoff success recently. So do we feel that maybe the Pacers are going in with the type of mindset they're saying, like, great, have us as underdogs. That's how we want it. Like, this is how we, can dig deep, because we've seen this team come together at times where you should count them out. But I don't remember the last time Cleveland was in some sort of battle and they hit a game winner or anything. So do we feel that Indiana can maybe feed off of this like togetherness, this confidence? The last time we saw them, they're celebrating at midcourt, looking like as much of a team as we've seen throughout the playoffs across the East Conference or the West.
Yeah, I've always felt that way. I always feel that there's just something about this town in general that the underdog, it's just a more comfortable way to play. Like, I love the fact that the Pacers are going on the road in game 1, and Cleveland. I love the fact that Vegas has got Cleveland basically as a in 5, maybe in 6 favorite. I love it. I think it's great. Whereas, you know, you go back to like the 2014 playoffs and you're just kind of sitting there sort of, you know, dreading everything because you're really worried about it because they're the one seed and there's, you know, anytime expectations are attached, you know, I'm wearing a Purdue shirt for God's sake. Ask a Purdue fan about that. Anytime expectations are attached, you're like, oh my God, you're panicking, right? But when you're the underdog and you can kind of come in with that mindset, it's a better thing. You know, look, their confidence has got to be just crazy right now. We all see it. The camaraderie, the chemistry, all of that stuff is off the charts. But at the end of the day, in the NBA playoffs, it's generally a stars league and an experience league. Been there, done that league. You know, the teams that are on the throne, and we're kind of in an era where we've had a little bit of parity here over the last, 5, 6, 7 years. But generally speaking, the 30, 40 years before that, the teams that are on the throne pretty much stayed on the throne until the next team came and took them off the throne, and then they stayed on the throne for a while. So to me, you're absolutely right that there's no been there, done that with Cleveland like there is with Boston. Or like there is with, some other teams that would have been to the finals or won a championship or even some individual players like Giannis. Like, at least he has that pedigree, or Chris Middleton from the Bucks from last year. You don't really have that with this Cleveland team. But I do think that there is something to, us against the world and the whole deal. But I think, in a way, guys, Cleveland's approaching it the same way because there's no glitz and glamour with Cleveland. They aren't the Lakers or, any of these other teams that and even their star players like Evan Mobley's a great player. Darius Garland's a great player. Donovan Mitchell is a great player. I don't think any of those guys are top 10 jerseys. I wouldn't think so. Right. So them and the Pacers are somewhat like-minded, I think, when it comes to that of kind of playing that card. But when you win 64 games and you're the one seed, you're supposed to win this series. The Pacers are not supposed to win this series. So I do think that is an advantage for them, and I think the fan base really feeds into that, playing that underdog type card.
If you look at last series, I would say that the opposing fan base would say that Rick Carlisle completely walked circles around or ran circles around Doc Rivers in terms of being the better coach, right? I mean, just Carlisle and his staff completely outcoached the Milwaukee Bucks coaching staff. Now, you look at Kenny Atkinson, a guy that's had success in this league before, but Facci mentioned with this Cavs team, they're kind of an unproven team. Rick's a guy that's won a championship, and Rick had this long-running history of not being able to get out of the first round after they won the championship. But since he's been in Indiana, they've had more success. So, curious your thoughts. Where do you see this coaching matchup at in terms of maybe who's got the advantage?
Yeah, I'm actually like a big Kenny Atkinson fan. I liked him when he was in Brooklyn. And I know that, I know that, right. I think if you just judged him on the win-loss record, I don't think that tells the whole story. I thought he did a good job there, all things considered. And, it's the NBA, right? So guys generally only last 3-4 years and then they get spat out and then they go somewhere else and then they succeed. And good for him. That's what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, Doc Rivers didn't put his 5 best players on the floor until Game 5. You know what I mean? So yeah, of course, Rick Carlisle coached circles around him because, my God, it took him 5 games to kind of realize, hey, wait a minute. Maybe
we probably could have coached circles around Doc.
that was a pretty rough series for him. But I'm a big Kenny Atkinson guy. So I would say the experience, definitely Carlisle would have that over Atkinson, obviously, even though, Atkinson has been on staffs of teams that have gone deeper into the playoffs and Warriors, and I think it was it Clippers before that, somebody else out west. But Atkinson's been with a couple of those teams too. But I just think, and I really hope that, even if the Pacers end up losing this series, I do hope that it comes with the territory as a coach, but I'm sure you guys get this as well. And even in the comments on this podcast, but on Twitter and things like that, like, what is Carlisle doing? And he played this person too long, or he's too stubborn about this or that, or whatever else. I understand. Even I sometimes I'm like, I don't think Rick should do this or whatever. I don't think that he should be above criticism, but I do hope overall picture wise that people kind of appreciate what a great job he's done and just what he did in the last series. I mean, really, coaching circles around Doc Rivers. We can turn Doc Rivers into a punching bag because of blowing 3-1 leads and all that other stuff and underachieving and things like that. But honestly, like for the gap to be that wide, I think it doesn't only speak to, dunking on Doc Rivers, but how good Rick Carlisle is at his job. I mean, he's an excellent head coach. He's going to be a Hall of Fame head coach when it's all said and done, I believe. And so I would say that I would lean Carlisle slightly just because of the experience, but I think Atkinson's a great coach, and he's done a phenomenal job with this group.
Yeah, obviously, the Cavs love to run a deep team just like the Pacers. And I don't think at this point, Indiana should shorten any rotations or anything of that sort. But like, is there someone that you feel that can really take their game to the next level in this series? I think we saw some inconsistent play, I would say, in the first round, whether it was McConnell had some rough games and he had some big games, or we saw, Haliburton had some down games and then he finished strong, had some good games. Siakam, a little bit up and down. We saw, we mentioned Nembhard and Nesmith were more consistent. Turner was a little bit up and down. Turner had probably one of the worst playoff games he's ever had, followed by two really good playoff games. Is there anyone that you think could maybe, rise to the occasion? Because we're obviously going to need players to really step up in this series if we're going to pull the upset.
Yeah, I wish there was an obvious one here because I think coming off the Bucks series, and this is a credit to the Pacers, I don't think there was really a single guy that had a bad series.
Yeah, there's more.
Yeah, bad moments for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, God, Miles Turner's game 3 was a freaking disaster. The rest of the series was amazing, right? Yeah, like
exactly.
He played awful. But I don't think anybody really had a bad series. I would like to see, and I'm not entirely sure how he's going to fit in here, but outside of the fact that I agree with you, I think the Pacers are going to stay with a deep rotation. He's still going to play. I wonder if there's an opportunity here for Obi Toppin to have a little bit of a louder series. He was good. He was okay.
He's all right. It's no breakout performances. We've seen him catch fire.
Yeah.
There was a stretch earlier this year where he was hitting game winners and putting up 20 points and hitting threes left and right. I feel like he's due for a 16, 18-point game, something like that. And we've seen role players can swing a game. So I think Obi Toppin's a good pick of someone that could play better, that could swing a game.
Yeah, and maybe he's just waiting, guys, for the inevitable NBA Finals matchup with Minnesota for when he's going to go off.
Maybe. Loves Minnesota.
Yes, let's go.
He's just keeping that in his back pocket. I'm not sure.
Finals
That'd be
MVP.
a ratings bonanza for the NBA, right? Minnesota, Indiana. They would love that.
Yeah, we'd be getting Max Kellerman back on First Take saying, if you got a final shot for the Pacers, who do you want it? He's like, give me Obi Toppin. But no, I'm glad you brought him up because I think he's going to be really important in this series because if Miles Turner gets in foul trouble against Jared Allen, I mean, how much do you trust Thomas Bryant in this series? I think this is going to be a big series where you realize like the Pacers losing Isaiah Jackson at the beginning of the year is such a bummer because he was really good last year in the playoffs. I think he kind of found himself a little bit and had some big moments, just the blocking of the shots and rebounding. Like Thomas Bryant can do some of that, but not to the same level. So I just feel like, man, this really stinks. Ijax isn't going to be healthy because I feel like he could have a much bigger imprint on this series. But overall, Derek, I want to just get your final thoughts on this. My last question, kind of fill in the blank here for me. The Pacers win this series if
the Pacers win this series if they take care of the basketball and don't get killed on the glass. Really, I honestly think it's that simple. I know that a lot of people want to focus. Cleveland is very good defensively, right? And I know people want to focus on kind of the offense-defense thing. I just think the Pacers are in a place right now offensively where they're going to be fine no matter what. There'll be dry stretches, though, but they'll also be made up with hot ones. So I just think it's about limiting turnovers and just try your best to just not get absolutely obliterated on the glass. And I think they can do enough to win this series. The other thing to add into that is that Haliburton and Siakam are just going to have to find another level offensively too. So it's, I'm giving you multiple answers here, but I think that's going to happen. So I still think it's about the first thing because I knocked my mic over doing that because I'm talking with my hands. I still think it's about the first thing because I think the second thing's going to happen. So I think Haliburton's going to step up and I think Siakam are going to step up offensively and carry some more of that load. And because of that, I think simply limiting turnovers and not getting destroyed on the glass is going to do a lot for them to find a way to win this series. if I'm being honest, and I understand this is a Pacers podcast, I mean, gun to my head, I still think Cleveland's going to win the series.
Yeah.
But I do think that if the Pacers do that, I think it's going to go the full 7.
Okay.
I think it's going to go 7-2.
Who you got? Cavs or Pacers?
Here's what I say. If I give my prediction, are you going to give yours?
Yeah, this is our Pacers preview.
Okay.
Last time you did it on the Bucks preview.
Like, I'm not giving mine. And I was like,
well,
what?
because you did it on the Bucks perspective preview. I wasn't doing it for that. I was saving it for our official preview. Then you had to go and have your wife have a baby early, so we couldn't even do it together. I had to do it by myself. I'm glad you got your prediction in because you wouldn't have had a chance to get it in if you didn't.
I got it. Look, I'm going to say Cavs in 7. I want to be wrong. But I think this is going to be a fight. I think this is going to be a battle. And you know what? If the Pacers had home court, I'd say that the Pacers would take it. And I hate predicting the Cavs in this, but I do think that Indiana's, until you can beat Indiana at home, I feel like we got just as good of a shot as anybody. And I think that Indiana will be able to win at home. Can they win on the road? If the Pacers can win one of those two in games 1 or 2, I might very well be wrong. What do you got, Alex?
All right, my head says Cavs. My heart says Pacers.
Oh, me too.
I'm following my heart since you guys both went Cavs too. I'm going to follow my heart. I did fill out on ESPN. You can do like a little challenger where you fill out your NBA brackets and kind of do it. I actually had the Pacers in my bracket. I had them going back to the Eastern Conference Finals, and look, every year they've beaten the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs. They've made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're 4-0 against the Bucks in playoff series. Okay, so
wow.
Let's just throw out that fact for you there if you like fun facts. Pacers in 7 on the road, stun the Cavaliers. More pressure is on Cleveland to get by Indiana than Indiana. We're playing with house money right now, and Donovan Mitchell is going to have to be great, which I think he's very capable of doing. Yep. But I just think the way this Pacers team has just been so resilient all year, they never die. And if they put the pressure on Cleveland, will they cater? I think there's a chance they can. So I'm going to pick the Pacers in 7.
Look, I love it. I wanted to so badly, but I'm always just a nervous wreck going into these series. I'm like I
picked the Knicks last year, okay?
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, I remember no one picked the Pacers in that series. I mean, we all remember that ESPN poll. It was downright disrespectful. I think it was like 14-0 or something like that.
It's going to be worse on this one.
Yeah, they're not going to give us credit, but that's what we are. That's who we are. We're always the underdogs, and I think in this scenario, I think Indiana's going to shock a lot of people. I've had a lot of friends say, "You guys are getting swept," and I'm like, "You haven't watched us at all. You have no idea what you're talking about." And I'm not even going to entertain this.
He's gaslighting you, Facci. He's gaslighting.
They just want to get a rise out of me. This is going to be a really good series. I don't think that Boston and the Knicks is going to be a good series. That might be a 5-game series. I mean, we're recording this right now. The Knicks have blown a lead. All of a sudden, it's 103-103 at the moment. The Knicks led by 10.
It was a 15-point game in the third quarter.
Exactly.
Oh
So they're having trouble closing out the Pistons. I think Boston handles the Knicks. I think this Pacers-Cavs game, they're both on equal playing ground, basically for the most part of rest. They've had time to rest. They're both healthy. It's going to be a great series. I think it's going 7. And Alex, did you say that you said Pacers in 7, right?
Pacers in 7, baby.
We're all saying 7.
I appreciate that.
7 games.
I appreciate though, like it's easy. I think it's easier to say, well, Pacers in 6, right? Because they split the first 2 and then they keep home court, whatever. I love the boldness of not only are the Pacers going to win the series, they're going to go to Cleveland and win a game 7, but they just did it in New York last year, albeit against a far worse Knicks team than what this Cavs team is. But I'm at the point now, guys, and this is the best compliment that I can give any team, is that, nothing that they do from here really would completely shock me. It's all contagious, right? The like I said, the vibes are just immaculate right now with this Pacers team. They're matching the fact that they're fun to watch with the fact that they're really good.
Yep.
And it's just a really, really fun. It's a fun combination. I'm just so happy that it's the month of May, and I just hung my Rays flag outside, and we're still talking Pacers basketball. Like that didn't happen for a long time in this town. Didn't happen for a long time.
It really is. Do not make plans in May. Look, I was trying to tell my wife, you got this small window where we got to have the baby. All right. Because look, we're going on a run. We're going on a run here. And it's just like last year, we basically almost made it through the month of May. It's May 1st, and you could set your clocks knowing that, like, don't take that vacation because you might miss some playoff games. And I'm not ready for it to end anytime soon. Game 1, anything can happen. anything can happen. There could be a little bit of rust on this Cavs team. Like I said earlier, they have not been tested in a while. We've seen the Pacers get punched in the mouth time after time and just find a way. And when you have that type of it factor, you just can't count them out. So I think we're all ready for a 7-game series. I'm excited for it. Derek, as we close out, just tell everybody where they can find you on social media, some of the awesome content that Joe is putting out.
Yeah, at Schultz975 on X, where there are playoff tweets and posts, or I don't know, whatever the heck we're calling them now. IBJ as well, Indianapolis Business Journal, bi-weekly, so every other week. I've got a new column up on there, even though Mark Monteith is more of our Pacers guy. I do write about the Pacers as well if you want to check that out, ibj.com. But and hanging out with you guys, I mean, this is by far my most relevant platform. This is where I get the most messages and people sliding into my DMs. God, I saw you with Alex and Facci again, and you look great. Stuff like that. So I appreciate you guys for inviting me on the show.
Always welcome.
Hey, with our two ugly mugs, it's hard not to look great. So I just want to thank you for bringing some, handsomeness to the podcast. Facci, I'm sorry to dog you there, but I'm just saying.
I did get a haircut recently, Hey, what do we think, But anyway,
I will say this. I got a haircut last week, and as I was at the game on Tuesday, James Boyd walks into the media row and says, "Man, Alex, you be looking crispy." So
there you go.
I got to say. Nice compliment from James Boyd for Alex Golden over here. So I
just want to see some pasty arms. That's all I want to.
Oh, you're gonna
the next time I'm on the
shirt
show,
off.
I want to see pasty arms.
Facci, take the shirt off.
That means things are going well.
Yeah. Hey, look, I won't strip now, but look at you'll see them again. All right, you're gonna get blinded. Put your sunglasses on. I'm telling you, no lotion going on here. I'm just keeping it, doing my part. All right, so. Hey,
Let's
Derek, next time, I don't think this is going to be the last time we're going to see you this series. You brought us some good luck in the past series. You brought us some bad luck, I guess, coming on after some Game 1 losses, I believe.
And Game 2, we got to maybe reschedule it. Game 2 post-game show, you want to come join us again?
Let's do it.
All right. We'll schedule
let's do
it. Game 2, Derek Schultz will be back to talk post-game with us about the game. So that'll be fun to look forward to. Pacer Nation, if you like this show, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. And make sure you, of course, follow us on ChatBCC, the best app on planet Earth, where you guys can talk with the Pacers group chat there about all things Pacers 24/7. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off. And Facci, hit us with those 3 words.
Let's go Pacers.
Yeah! That's how we feel!
Let's go!